That was my excited voice.
Oh, I was like, it's a little kitty cat.
I miss getting haircuts one day.
I just started cutting my own.
Wow.
That's just, you know,
I just stopped cutting mine.
2020, the year of innovation.
Yeah.
Self-improvement. There you go.
Self-improvement.
Yeah. All natural. Bless you.
Oh my gosh.
Bless you.
Oh, am I getting sick? Does anyone know how to make the bar go at the top, like the video bar?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
There's like a speaker view and I think a gallery view. Might be able to.
Bianca. Oh. Active speaker view. Thumbnail view.
Awesome. Y'all ready to get started?
Yeah. We are.
Let's go.
Welcome. Hi, everyone. My name is Brianna, and I manage events at General Assembly in Austin. I'm very excited about the event that we have planned for y'all. I have a really great panel lined up with a great discussion all about navigating the world of product and project management. So for those of you who haven't heard of us before, or sorry, I guess I'll back up to an agenda. Going to go run through some quick announcements with everyone. Going to dive into a panel discussion. And then we're going to spend the last 30 minutes of this event in breakout sessions, so you can have a little bit of a small group mentor session. But before we get into all the fun stuff, a little bit about who we are. General Assembly is a tech education company that specializes in upskilling and career development training within tech, data, design, and business. We started back in 2011 and have since grown to over 30 campuses around the globe. We're most proud of our 70,000 alumni who have graduated from part-time and full-time programs. And we also work with businesses to help them reskill and retain their talent through private trainings and workshops. So wanted to take a very important moment to give a huge shout out and thank you to our incredible partners. Before we get started, I would love to share a little bit about them. So ProductHired is the largest job board for product roles with over 96,000 product jobs, both global and remote. They have interview study guides and event search platform to find product meetups and conferences and trainings, and it's completely free. Both for candidates to use and employers to post jobs. So definitely recommend checking them out if you're looking to get into this world. And then I also wanted to introduce Kick-Ass PM. They're an incredible meetup group whose goal is to unite folks under the banner of digital project management. Whether you've been in project management for years or you're looking to make a transition into the field, this group's for you. They pride themselves on offering a casual professional atmosphere where you can learn the best way to manage your team, perfect your process, and reach those milestones on your personal Gantt chart. They are an Austin-based company, an Austin-based meetup group, but since we're all fully remote, we get to do really cool stuff like enjoy other people's virtual meetups. So you can find them on the meetup platform or on kickasspm.co. And I'll also give y'all a follow-up on what that looks like. I'll link that, in the follow-up email tomorrow. So no need to have to write that down now. Before we dive in, I'd love to go over some meeting norms with y'all. This event is being recorded. We can't see or hear you right now, and we won't be able to throughout the entire panel discussion. This is a webinar format, so please use the chat to for color commentary. Would love for y'all to actually introduce yourselves on chat and maybe put where you're tuning in from. And then for questions that we can try to get to during the Q&A section, there is a Q&A function, so feel free to just post your questions there. So the last 30 minutes, like I mentioned, they're going to be small group breakout rooms. We want y'all to be able to, self-identify which career path. We have a split panel between product and project managers on this panel. So want y'all to figure out who's best for continuing the conversation and answering your questions. So we're actually going to be using a different different Zoom links for those. And I will come back on right before we do that to give instructions. So don't stress. I'll just be sending out a Google Doc that has the Zoom links to each individual speaker's Zoom room. During that time, we ask that you do turn your camera on if you feel comfortable. Would love for you to come off mute to join the conversation when needed, but we're all working in interesting times, so I'm sure a lot of y'all have kids in the background or pets or significant others. Don't let that shy you away from joining the conversation. We just ask that once you are done making your comment or asking your question that you put yourself back on mute. Lastly, please be respectful and have fun. And if you're into sharing on social media, we'd love for you to tag us. So without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen and would love to hand this over to Caroline, who is going to moderate and facilitate the rest of the evening. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, Brianna. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for spending your evening with us. So a little bit about me. I actually come from a background of project and program management, and I recently made the transition into product management. So I am the senior product manager at a startup called Suited, and our mission is to diversify the workplace with AI and machine learning assessments. So any of you who are interested in kind of how I made that transition, I get a lot of questions about that. I'm happy to answer those questions. And then I will be moderating tonight, so I've got some questions for the panel, but let's maybe kick it off with some intros, and maybe if everybody on the panel might explain whether they're in product or project management and what kind of experience they have with that. And oh, I was gonna say for everyone to specify the difference, because I know PMs in product always call it PMs, and then everybody in project calls it PMs. So for this panel, I think we should probably say project or product, so we have to specify. And then maybe just for fun, what is one thing, what's the best thing about being remote, totally remote during COVID in your job? So maybe give an intro, a little bit of background, and what's the best thing about being remote during COVID? I'll kick it over to, let's start with Eden.
Cool. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Sweet. My name is Eden Holt. I'm a senior program manager at Amazon, specifically on the business operations team. So my background is in project management. Sometimes it's called PGM to kind of separate, Caroline, to your point. In terms of a little bit of what I do today, I'm part of the consumer engagement org, which is essentially what you experience as an Amazon shopper, whether desktop or mobile. And as the biz ops team, we really focus on unblocking our org from an organizational perspective, from a systematic and process perspective. I was in oil and gas before I came into tech, so that was a whole different perspective on project management. And something that I like about quarantine so far, I think being able, real talk, being able to finish laundry in the middle of the day so I don't have to do it
great.
at night.
It's a blessing and a curse. Because I try to do them at the same time, right? I'm like trying to do laundry while I'm trying to have a conversation. All right, who are you gonna kick it to, Eden?
Kick it to Michelle.
Hey guys, my name is Michelle Parsons, and I am a product manager at Netflix, and I run global kids and family product management across all of our regions as well as all of our platforms, so web, TV, and mobile. One of the things that I love about quarantine, I mean, I have so much more time for hobbies now. So between like me picking up like sewing, because why not, as well as gardening and just like hanging out with my dog and stuff like that. Like there's just so much more time that I'm not, wasting traveling between the office and home. And so, yeah, it's been nice to kind of just like get back to like something that I would never have ever done living in a city. I've kind of moved out to the burbs to take advantage of more space as well. So that's been interesting.
I feel like everybody's gardening. I'm gardening and I'm not a gardener. I'm terrible at it.
Me either.
Are you sewing like outfits or are you just?
No, we were I started sewing face masks because we were just, there's a need at the beginning. My partner's actually a doctor. And so we were just like, there was like no PPE. And so we were like, why don't we just sew them? And then we got really into it with all the cool fabrics and whatnot. So yeah, a little side hobby.
I heard a lot of people doing that.
Yeah.
All right. Ming, I think that leaves you.
Okay. I'm actually very interested in hearing how you went from project to product, Caroline. But before we get there, my name is Ming. I am a product manager at Atlassian. I am working on this project called Bitbucket. I'm not sure how many developers we have here. We're serving, close to 10 million users on a day-to-day basis. Essentially, making all these developers happy is a pretty tall task. But at the end of the day, every company is starting to be a software company. So we're trying to make them go to market faster and deliver value faster to the customers. So that's, in a nutshell, what I do almost 24/7 because we are remote. But it's not all work, right? So there's a lot more time to slow down. And, as a product manager, I find that it's really helpful to write down what it is you want to do and what it is you want to tell the team and what goals you want to set. And so, when you're running around and trying to herd cats, oftentimes you don't have that much opportunity to do that. And so now it's a little bit easier to slow down and kind of gather your thoughts. And I've come to really appreciate that about working remote.
I have too. It's one of the best things for me is I block out time and I can actually sit and think and do some heads down work. So it's very much appreciated too. I'm just curious, where is everybody? I'm in Austin. I'm guessing, Ming, you're in Austin with that last name?
I am. I'm in Austin. I'm in Austin in a garage somewhere, but there's my background today.
I'm in Boston at the moment.
I'm in Seattle and I just actually moved from Boston. So.
Oh, nice. There you go.
All right. Well, let's get into it. I've got questions for you guys. Lots of questions. Hard-hitting investigative journalism here. I think first things first, probably want to define the differences between what we've sort of talked about here. There's project management, we've got product management, we've even got program management, which can mean different things at different companies. So why don't we kind of talk about what it means at your company? What does product or your role and title, and what does it mean at your company? I'm going to start with Michelle.
Cool. Awesome. So I've been in product at several different companies, and they all, like you said, Caroline, have different flavors of kind of the roles and expectations. So at Netflix, product management is much more, it's really called product innovation. And it's much more akin to like really owning the entire strategy for a product line. So, we have folks who kind of run our TV product. We have folks who run our mobile product, and I myself run our kids and family kind of vertical. So what I'm doing on a daily basis is, first really kind of trying to construct the strategy. Like, what are the big problems that we're trying to solve? And then prioritizing those based on impact. And so really core to my job is understanding what are the main metrics that we're trying to move for the organization, whether that be getting people to sign up or getting people to come back more often. And then how might we develop different ideas or features that might help solve those needs. And so really from my day-to-day is really working with a series of designers, project and program managers, engineers, data scientists, consumer insights researchers, to really try and ensure that we have all the information and data that we need to make sound decisions and prioritize what features and opportunities we're going to chase. And then really providing feedback to my team and the space to my team to really execute upon the shared vision that we have for our features and in my space now, the entire vertical of kids and family. And so, yeah.
I'm kind of curious, just a follow-on question before I move on, is how do you work with your project managers, for example? Because you mentioned you work with your product, their project, they also have program.
Exactly. So at Netflix, we have two functions, so product and then program. So we don't necessarily have project management. And I would say that program managers kind of inherit the project management piece of things. So really, I look at my program manager as kind of like my right-hand person. Like, we're really a team. We strongly collaborate on the execution and delivery of the entire kids and family program, really, right? So, well, I'm spending a lot more of my time thinking about, like, what is the strategy? What data do we need to get? What questions do we need to answer? How do we actually define, work with designers to really ensure we're answering those questions in the best ways possible? My counterpart in program management is ensuring that, like, all right, if we're going to want to execute upon these 3 things in this next quarter, what things do I need to make sure are set up across the organization with our partner teams, our collaborators cross-functionally, whether that be in creating new assets or working with our content team, working with our tagging team, our engineering team, to ensure that we have all the structures in place to make our projects successful once we actually kick them off. And then that we have all stakeholders in the room to kind of communicate what's going on. Right. And so once we have a project in flight, I really kind of move on to the next thing. Like, okay, like, what is now the next big initiative that we want to focus on? Ensure that I have, again, all the context is properly curated and communicated out to the organization and to our core team. And then we kind of start that cycle over again. And so, yeah, I really see them, at least at Netflix, as really running the operations of everything. Right. Mm-hmm. So kind of akin to like a CEO or something.
Yeah, I think it's a luxury. It's so nice that you're at a company big enough where there is someone dedicated to kind of manage the operational side. A lot of product managers, I guess, and we'll move on to Ming and see what his experience is, but they often have to kind of do a lot of that themselves. So it does matter kind of what company you're at. I know at my company, I do it all. So
yeah. More power to you.
Ming, what about you?
Yeah, Caroline, I think you bring up a good point. It really depends on the size of the organization or the organizational structure or how big this business might be. That really defines what you actually do, titles aside. But there is this question, right? There's a project manager and a product manager, and why do we have a question today of what the difference is? And really, I think that, Michelle outlined a whole bunch of things that I've been thinking about too, is that at the core of it, the difference is the outcomes that we deliver. Abstractly put, I feel like product managers have to answer a lot of the why. So we have to own the why to not only our users, but also our stakeholders. Have to gather all this data and think about strategically what type of user outcomes, what user results, customer results we're trying to generate. And then on the project side, you're trying to answer when, like on the execution. And so I think the why and the when strike kind of an overlap. Like, so a lot of times that may be fuzzy as to like who can answer the why and the when. And sometimes a product manager gets roped in because who else, well, I can't speak for Eden here, but who else is better suited to like put a nice bow on top, because we span all of these organizations, right? Like we span marketing, sales, support, and a lot of times if you want the project to execute across all these orgs, the product manager gets default position or gets kind of tapped on the shoulder quite readily, I find.
Yeah, I think that your definition of, product is responsible for why, and to have enough evidence for their decision making. So the decision making and prioritization, a huge part of what we do every day. And a cross-functional collaboration is true. When I was a project manager, though, I found that I did a lot of the same things, but I think that and I can come back to this in a bit more detail, but I feel like the thing that is really different for me is that project managers sometimes get pigeonholed into doing sort of timelines, budgets, resourcing, and scheduling. But many of them have really great strategic minds, and they often contribute strategically in whatever group they're in. And so it just depends, I think, on the organization and how your teams are structured, and the skill sets of the person. So this project product, to your point, very overlapping. Would love to hear from you, Eden, on program at Amazon.
So I'd like to start from actually something that you just said, Caroline, about getting pigeonholed in a sense. And I think an interesting way to look at it is to go back to something that the instructor of my PMP certification told me, like as part of the project management certification or education, which was that project managers don't do the work. And so it's not to say that project managers don't work. It's just that as project managers, we don't play an instrument in the symphony. We're conductors. We look at timelines and budgets and how the different pieces all come into a whole, come into harmony, but we're not there on a trombone or a clarinet. The strategy, and I think that's the difference between project management and program management, is that a program manager also incorporates the strategy and also starts giving a tone to the direction of the project, or in most programs and programs at Amazon is a collection of projects and potentially products. And so I've worked on projects as a senior project manager, where I worked with product managers to launch a product. So we started working on the concept, and it wasn't, from an organizational perspective, we didn't have the infrastructure to support creating a product. So part of my job as a project manager was to help onboard the product manager, who would then own the product long term. So another important component around the conversation between project and product is that projects are temporary. It's something that's intentionally a certain point in time, whereas a product, as we hope, is very successful and stays around for a really long time and continues to develop and evolve with the needs of the customer, as opposed to a project where it's like, I want to do this, and then once this is done, the project manager moves on to something else. And then to bring it back around to program, that's a maybe a wider or broader perspective, where we're saying, okay, we know that what we're trying to achieve won't be able to be achieved with one project or one product, and may potentially include multiple products, multiple projects, multiple teams within the organization coming together, again, around a specific initiative.
So who needs a diagram?
You bring up a great point. I'm sorry to jump in. Like, projects are temporary and they are kind of binary. Like, did you do it or not? And I find oftentimes like a product thing is a growth type of thing. Like, even failure is a learning experience where we have to move on from there and see why we failed and how we can improve from there. Sorry.
I was just saying, it's okay. Don't let it happen again, Ming. I'm just kidding. I feel like we need a diagram. I know that it can be very confusing. I've been to multiple meetups where this is a topic, and it goes around and around, and you can even include, analysts and BAs and all these other types of thin sliced roles in here. The way I sort of see it, in my personal view, having been on the project, program, and product side now, is that product is very much the why. It's very much the strategic thinking. It's very much data-driven decision making. It's very much decision making frameworks and prioritization by looking at impact and effort. It's understanding engineering. It's understanding your customer experience. It's prioritizing that customer. Whereas project management is a thinner slice, and I think it is very much kind of the mechanics of operationalizing how we do the things we're doing, executing on those features or whatever. So some people see in the tech world, the project management is very similar to Scrum Masters, or could be considered Scrum Masters. I don't want to muddy the waters here, but there is a little bit of that too. And exactly right, Eden. I think a program manager is very much someone probably at a senior level who's had project management experience, who is managing complex projects or complex portfolio. And it's across multiple business units potentially, right? And it also, back to kind of square one, it depends on your organization. I mean, I would say at a startup where I'm at right now, I'm a product manager, but I'm also the project manager. I'm also helping the product marketing manager. I'm also doing program management. I mean, you know, I'm a CEO, everything. And so, but at a big company, you're going to have, like Michelle has, some assistants. You're going to have a project or a program manager. And maybe Atlassian's a very big company too. Maybe you guys have some support in those areas, or it's split up differently. So I think that the net of this is that the definition is different everywhere. And what you got to do is read the job description. You got to ask people who are actually working at these companies and find out, what do you do every day? And see if that's for you. So I will move on to the next question I have here. Let's talk about those skills. I wonder if, let me see, Eden, what do you think are the key skills, since you have project and program management, what do you think are the key skills that you should have to be really successful as a project or program management?
I think that the top skill to have is communication, being able to communicate clearly, being able to absorb verbal cues, being able to communicate with your body, to have a very broad and robust set of communication skills, written communication. What ends up happening inevitably, because you're coordinating a lot of different people who speak different languages, they could be literally some person that's native in one language and another person that's native in another language. It could be someone who prefers written versus verbal, or the other way around. Someone maybe with some kind of impairment or disability, someone who literally maybe can't use their eyes to comprehend. And then also you're talking about people from with different disciplines. So someone from accounting speaks a totally different language than someone from HR, than someone from product, than someone from finance. They just think differently. So I think that having good communication skills around, one, being able to communicate what you're trying to say, and also being able to understand what different people are trying to say or are saying, is really helpful in project and program.
What do you think, Ming?
I totally agree that communication is fundamental to either project management or product management. I mean, I was just thinking about what product managers do, and the most important skills that they possess. Really, a product manager is trying to mitigate chaos. Like, I'm sure this happens in your company, Michelle. Like, when somebody says, "Hey, let's improve the personalized experience in Netflix and get 20% more acquisition," and then all of a sudden, that's a really chaotic question. Like, how do we even do that? And so a product manager has to be able to figure that out and be very clear with the team, provide clarity for the team in such a way that they know how to execute. And so I think that is fundamental. Communication is fundamental to that.
Yeah, and I think I can kind of like build on that a little bit. I think clarity and communication are super important. I think they're fundamental, really, I think just to any role, honestly, out there, and irrespective of what type of role you're in, being able to clearly communicate and articulate your thoughts and ideas, and then execute upon those. But I think the other piece for product management that I would really highlight, I guess two things really. The first is empathy. Really being able to understand deeply your customer problems, in my mind, is super important. Without empathy, you don't bias is so easy to kind of infuse upon the things that you're trying to solve or what you think is important. And so I think being able to empathize and lean on your partners, like your research scientists or your data analysts, to really understand true behavior and how that might be either impeded on your service, or, for Netflix in my case, or not being thought of, right? And then I think secondly, to your point around trying to solve problems and communicating clarity, it's about bringing people along for the ride. Product management is all about working with other talented, skilled teams, and you really are just kind of there to help ensure that we're working on the right things, that the priorities are communicated, that you're prioritizing in a ruthless way so that you're not adding extra confusion and distracting teams, and they're keeping them very focused. But I think a lot of it has to do with ensuring that people are bought into your strategy, bought into the things that they're working on, are happy. And that comes with allowing the space for your team to provide feedback both to you, to the strategy, to the direction and the approach. But ultimately, at the end of the day, being very clear, as being said, about executing, right? What should we be doing and why? And then allowing the teams to figure out how, right? So I think those two things in my mind are very important as well.
Yeah.
Can I add one more?
What is it?
Yeah.
This might be
I told you it was the last time.
This might be controversial, but it's kind of like you also have to be an umbrella so that the team doesn't get bombarded by or get sidetracked by other things. So you have to be successful in being able to convince people what the right thing to do might be, and not only your people, but people above and your customers, just to make sure that you're an umbrella for your team. They don't get unplanned work and get demoralized. That's how I know the topic.
1000%. I totally agree. And I would say in all of my roles, from project to program to product management, those things are all true. At a very tactical level, though, I feel like my day-to-day, the majority of my day-to-day is facilitating conversation and collaboration and trying to extract knowledge from people and buy-in, like what you're saying, trying to get them on this, we're all running in the same direction towards the same thing. So there is an aspect of kind of leadership, some inspiration that you have to bring to the table, because nobody reports to you. So very much a kind of player coach. If there's one thing I would tell everybody to try to read up on or learn how to do, is be a servant leader and coach people to the right direction. If you can learn some of those tactics, I feel like some of the things I have learned are super, super useful. And one of them is really simple. It's listening, actively listening, and letting people get completely heard. And sometimes just that act alone has brought alignment for me in so many ways. Cool. Yeah, so I think that people have a lot of interest in understanding how you all got to these roles. So can you share a little bit, like, what's your maybe educational background? What's your career trajectory? Did you start, I know you mentioned oil and gas, but like, did you go to school for something in tech? Did you get some certifications? Like, how did you find your way and build the skills to be where you are right now?
This is a good question. So I think, honestly, when I think about how I really got into project management, I think that, first of all, I grew up with a mother who did all the things all the time. And I think that learning from her how to juggle balls on fire while on a unicycle. That is how, like, that's how I first started. I studied sociology in college in Boston. I went to UMass Boston. I studied sociology with a minor in philosophy and law. So you can tell that I like reading, I like writing, I like giving people my opinion, and I always think I'm right. So I feel like that's also good for project management and program management, because you also need to learn a lot. I think in general, we're generalists in that sense. So I'm good at learning things. And I think that that maybe to your earlier question is also a good skill, is to be able to be really good at learning and picking up on new things. So but again, back to the question. I actually started in my previous company it's the News Global Partners as a temporary job because I wanted to start a juice bar with 2 partners. And this was before juice was a thing. So this was before it went from LA to New York to Boston. So it was in the New York phase, and juice and juicing. And they had an opening for a project management role, an entry-level project management role for 8 months. And I was like, oh, this is perfect, because by then we'll have a restaurant open and everything. And so as history has it, we didn't open the juice bar. Ooh, we didn't open the juice bar. And sorry, my headphone fell out. And I stayed in that role and I ended up growing within that role for 5 years. And I did take a certification. So I took a PMP certification, a class and then certification that gave me kind of the official training around project management. And then about a year ago, I joined Amazon as a senior program manager.
Did you take the PMP on recommendation from someone? And how do you think that PMP has impacted your hireability or marketability?
I'll tell you honestly, I took the PMP because I felt in some ways inadequate. And I think that this is also a good point to talk about kind of imposter syndrome. In roles, especially roles where your value comes from being able to be connective tissue and to be able to make things run really smoothly, it's really easy, or at least it was easy for me to feel like, okay, but you know, I'm not a finance person. I'm not a, you know, I'm not a developer. You know, I don't have a computer science degree. And so I sought out the certification to kind of help me feel more, I guess, official. But I do recommend it in the sense that it helped me understand my unique contribution. And it also introduced me to a lot of the methodologies that are out there. And hopefully we get to it at some point. But I think that this is also an entry point to the tangent of kind of Agile and Scrum when we talk about these different methodologies and understanding that some of them are tactics, like how to do that, so how to quantify versus the idea. And so the certification really helped me understand the overall theory and idea and be able to pick the methodologies with just more options. It gave me more options. So yes, so I do recommend it.
I'll chime in for 1 second on a little bit controversial statement that I will make, and it's not to, hopefully it doesn't offend anyone. I used to teach project management at GA also, and our students always ask, what certifications do I need? This imposter syndrome theme comes up constantly. And the advice I would always give is that, you know, it's not required. And I would even say in some technical organizations, a PMP may signal that you are trained in a traditional way and not in a Agile, Scrum, modern way, right? That may not be true for most organizations. It's clearly not true at Amazon, but I guess the net of it is to say, you know, you can go get certifications in a PMP, for example, or any of the many other certifications, which we can talk about too, but they're not required. But they will give you some context, and if you feel like that would accelerate your ability to acclimate to an environment, it could help. Lots of people in tech are self-taught as well. Lots of people come into these jobs without these certifications. So there's not really a one way to do it, I would say. I'd love to hear kind of more about journey from Ming. How did you get into being a product manager at Atlassian?
You know, if there's a PM certification, I would take it right away.
A product or a project?
Product.
Product.
But there's no certification. Are there? I feel like
some. There's some. There's like Pragmatic, you know, that kind of thing, and Pendo.
I don't feel like it's as like official where you can put it as, you know, 3 letters after your name type
That's
of
right.
thing.
Unless you're a product owner. Yes, you're right.
And but you know, I resonated with what you said earlier, Michelle, about hobbies. I've been all over the place. I started as a computer science person in college, and I graduated with a painting degree. And so, you know, as a person with a varied background, you know, I've been in search for something that really resonates with my interests, and you know, being analytical, being empathetic. A lot of the things that we do as product managers really resonate with my interests and my skill set. You know, I come from an engineering / technical consulting background who interface with customers and then liaise with engineering. So I just decided to cut that part out and said that, you know, product management probably has the best career path for myself. And so that's how I started down that path.
So were you an engineer by profession? Did you have a job as an engineer?
So yeah, I started as an engineer, and then I went to technical consulting because it was more salesy and then like more customer oriented, customer facing, because it's so important to see who they are, who your customers are. A lot of times when you're an engineer, you don't get to do that. And so that's always been part of what makes me go to work, is that I want to make a difference in someone's day. And so eventually I went over to product because I felt like that was a natural evolution in my career search.
So a lot of people ask, you know, in order to be a product manager, do you need to have technical skills? And I always answer, it doesn't hurt. You are going to have to work in project and program management too. I think it helps. It doesn't mean that you can't do the job, but you have to be, and this is the other thing that we were talking about in terms of skills. To me, one of the other most important skills is curiosity. So if you're curious about how your teams work, then you're going to learn a little bit about engineering or code or something. But in your case, you were an engineer. So did you see that transition to a product title and a product role come a little bit easier? We know there's technical product managers. We know that, you know, there's regular quote unquote product managers. How did that work for you? Did you just go straight from, say, a technical consultant to applying for product jobs?
Well, I had the opportunity to transfer within the company, which I feel like is actually the easiest way to do that. You know, I actually can't, like, I'm like a fish in water. So I'm like, I don't know the difference. So like, I feel like I'm doing fine. But maybe Michelle has a different opinion because she didn't come from a technical background. I think that you don't necessarily need to have a technical background, but like you say, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, definitely. I concur with both of you all. I think that I've always, my background is in science. You know, I was a biology and chemistry major, and I've always been just like curious about how things work, how systems are put together. And so I think when you're thinking about product and technology and kind of the intersection of those two things, I mean, you can't really have one without the other. And so really understanding how your technical stack works or how your organization is built, if you're in a technology company, I think is critical to your understanding about how long it will take to get things done, but also how the information flows from the point where it's stored out to your customer. I mean, I consider myself as a kid growing up just always very curious. I think I kind of resonate with that, Caroline, just like trying to problem solve. I think creative problem solving is super important as a product manager, because really it's a blending of art and science in my mind.
Totally.
I started out as a teacher, actually. So I was teaching high school science, and I just kept kind of coming back to, hey, I can only influence like this small little area, which is my classroom. And so how do I basically solve the bigger systemic problems and changes that I want to kind of implement? And I ended up working at a ed tech company in their content, the content analyst. I just kept on coming back to this place where I was like, hey, these people over here in the product org are doing interesting things, they're solving interesting problems, and that's exactly kind of what I'm most interested in. And I really just kept on like pounding down the door and saying, hey, can I help with some competitive analysis? Can I help with customer interviews? And I think really understanding the core needs of those users, again, going back to empathy, really helped propel me. And so I internally transferred, I think similar to Ming, from a different part of the organization, obviously a softer side, into product, really under the guise of how do we solve problems for our customers. So I think there's different avenues into product and different skills that you can really hone and use to kind of leverage a role. But it really comes down to fundamental skills around, can you take a big complex problem, identify key things within that you are going to utilize to really understand if you're making measured progress towards these goals and making impact, really.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It definitely is an art and science. I consider myself highly analytical also. And so, you know, the bad part of that is like analysis paralysis, which can happen. But the good part of that is that you're willing to look at everything from multiple facets. So I see a couple questions. People are curious about this transition from project to product, and I'll speak a little bit about that, but we can talk more about that in a breakout session. But for me in particular, I fell into tech at a time when it wasn't really even tech. It was a really long time ago, longer than I want to share. And I just started doing very similar to what you were describing. I was at Discovery Channel and I was doing .com, quote unquote .com work. And that was more on the content side. And that just evolved into becoming involved in teams that were building websites and building software at the time. And then just fast forward, gig after gig after gig, and learning more and getting more experience on the job. I was able to get up into some senior positions at Fortune 100 companies. And then I made the decision that I wanted to move out of program management because I am a problem solver like you. Actually, my background's in journalism and foreign diplomacy, which you can't believe how much it comes in handy all the time. I mean, it's constant diplomacy and constant investigation. And so it's really interesting that it works for me. But anyways, and so about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I decided to make this transition into product by trying to reshape the skills that I did have and the things that I had been doing into more of a product framework and talking about them in that way. And so that's what got me here. So I can talk more deeply about that in our breakout sessions. And I think right on the button, it's 10 till, I think it is time. I don't know if Brianna's still on.
I think we have a few minutes to take some general questions from the Q&A.
Okay.
And then in about 10 minutes, we'll move on. So maybe we can answer some more of the
Sorry.
questions, and then dive into the breakouts.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, general questions. I guess I'll open this Q&A. Let me see. Let's see. Okay, what would be your, why can't I talk? What would be your top piece of advice for someone revamping their resume and cover letters to make a transition into product management with no formal product management background?
I mean, I think one piece of advice from my perspective is to highlight any cross-functional experience that you do have working with cross-functional teams. So whether that's engineering or design, marketing, your sales team, to really show that you understand different parts of your organization, if that is possible. I think generally also really making your resume very data focused. So how do you, like, results oriented really? So I did X by doing Y, I think would be very helpful as well.
I resonate with that quite a bit. When writing a resume, it's so important to tell folks what your outcomes were. Like, what outcomes did you own? Like, you led a team of 25 people to deliver a project within this timeline with this much budget. Lots of like quantitative data would really, really help highlight your accomplishments rather than making it more anecdotal.
I think from my perspective, having just gone through the gauntlet of product management interviews, which are rigorous, I don't want anyone to have any illusions. It's not easy. I would definitely put a lot of energy and effort into telling your story and making it crystal clear how the skills that are product oriented, just like what Ming and what Michelle were saying, where there's outcomes and data driven, and you have some of those data points, but beyond that, like, you've got to be able to explain the story from beginning to end. And that communication, back to the communication skill, is so, so important. And that takes a lot of time. It takes time to sit down and gather all that information and then create a story out of it, because a lot of times we do forget what that is. But the sooner you can create a narrative, and maybe a litmus test for that is like being able to tell your friends what you did at work today. You know, you need to be able to tell that story in that way so that it's clear to the people that you're communicating with. I think that's not necessarily a resume question, but it's an interview question. Oh, this is a good one. Would the knowledge of UX design be helpful when becoming a product manager?
I mean, oh yeah, go ahead, Ming.
Go ahead, Michelle.
No, I was
just
I think it kind of goes back to the similar question around technical knowledge and technical skills. Again, because a product manager is cross-functional and does work with multiple stakeholders across the organization and really drive the team forward of like UX designers, CI, data scientists, engineering, having fundamental core knowledge of just how all of these different pieces of the organization and roles work, I think is really helpful in becoming a really effective product manager. I don't think it's something that you need to have on day one, but I think that, again, I think Carolyn said it, if you are just inherently curious and you are really a good product manager, I think inherently you're going to gravitate or try to understand the members of your team, what they work on, how their tool set works, so that you are more informed and you are more effective. So I think the answer is definitely yes, it does not hurt.
I think that I just have something to add on to that. Sorry, I promise. Never will I interrupt you again.
You're dead to me, Ming.
I mean, something you said earlier, Michelle, the empathy part. That, you know, UX designers are empathy machines. Like, they really identify with what problems they're trying to solve and how to solve those problems. And to that end, I partner with my UX researchers and designers and treat them as like co-product owners. I think there are many product managers, or not, if not in title, they really understand the why of what we're trying to do or try to solve. And so, yeah, I think it really helps.
I feel very strongly that product managers should have design strategy, design thinking, and design skills, research skills. I think that let me back up. I feel like one of the best things that luckily happened to me in my career was that I ended up in a team of UX designers and researchers. And I was exposed really early to a bunch of different design methods, design thinking, and I use those tools every day. And they help me facilitate conversations. They help me define things. They help me organize things. And it helps me drive collaboration. So for me, I'm very customer focused. Most product managers, I think, are very customer focused and customer obsessed, to use an Amazon term. But I think that having those design thinking skills and being very well versed in some of that is kind of like, it's like you have a leg up. You can accelerate your communication, which is what we were talking about before, is communication. So I feel very strongly that those are really, really valuable skills to have. Last question. Some folks are asking, what's your day-to-day look like? Eden, what's it look like when you wake up every morning? You roll over and start typing emails?
I'll actually say that I started incorporating more of a beginning of the day ritual. Like at the end of the day, I put my laptop in a very specific place and I wrap up my headphone. I'm very intentional about it so that I can commute back home into my personal life. And so my beginning of my day starts with my ritual of opening the day and commuting to work. And I think Ming touched on it. I usually start my day in Asana, going through my tasks and prioritizing tasks for the day, because it's really easy to spend half of my day in email. I need to catch myself sometimes, because it's also this false signal of productivity. Like if I end the day with a clear inbox, I feel really good, but did I actually do something? Not so much. So I start my day by prioritizing tasks. I manage 2 programs, and so I also try to make sure that I'm touching on both, that I'm keeping a balance in terms of addressing the needs and moving both programs forward. I meet less than I used to as a project manager. As a program manager, I'm less in meetings. And I think that also at Amazon specifically, some people may be familiar with the term of the 2 pizza team, but the idea is that the optimal work unit is someone doing all the work by themselves. So as much of the work that you can do and figure out yourself. So I do spend less time in meetings than I did as a project manager, coordinating a lot of other people's work. And I think that also because Amazon is a tech company, I do spend a lot of time learning and researching and coding and doing a little bit of web development. I spend some time in SharePoint. I spend some time. So I think it depends on the program and what I'm working on. Sometimes it's crafting a mass distribution email, and sometimes it's coordinating an event, and sometimes it's creating a website.
Michelle,
I have a hack in the personal.
He did it again. It's like he knows I'm about to say something.
This is what product managers do, by the way. We just have opinions.
I'm on Zoom all day. That's what I do. No. Go ahead, Ming. Your turn, please.
Sorry. My personal hack is to put down all your initiatives, everything you're trying to do in an organized way, and broadcast that to the company. My way to do that, since I work at Atlassian, I have a personal Jira board, and I just kind of like tell everybody what I'm doing at all times. That way, if they're like trying to derail me or try to like put stuff on my calendar, they know exactly like where they are in my priorities, and that sometimes helps to focus. So that's the thing. If you're a very like busy product manager who, probably working in an organization across like multiple different orgs, then that's really helpful to broadcast what it is you're doing, publicize it.
I do that too. It's a good way. Yeah.
Just have my calendar open. So I do not believe in private calendars. I hate them. I'll go really quickly just because I think we're running out of time here for this section. But my day really is like spent on Zoom all day. But more concretely, I really am focused largely on ensuring that I meet with all of my cross-functional partners on the content side of the house, on our editorial, in marketing, in PR, on product comms, my design team, my direct kind of kids product team itself, to really ensure that like they have all the things that they need from me, like questions are answered, they can kind of move on with their work. And then I spend a lot of my time with my data scientist to really start to dig into what is coming up next. Like, where are there other opportunities that we haven't necessarily explored yet? Based on test learnings that we've, A/B tests that we've run, either negative or positive results, where can we kind of dig in even further? So my days are really spent thinking about the what next, based off of learnings that we've extracted from tests that we've run or features that we've launched. Where can we find the next opportunity? Where can we find the next problem to solve, really? And then helping identify research opportunities or gaps that we need to kind of go explore. And so my day-to-day really is sitting in meetings with people all across the organization to understand, hey, what are your pain points in your particular area of the organization, and how might we help kind of elevate those in terms of strategy for kids and family?
Yeah, it's pretty much my day too. Meetings after meetings after meetings, but a lot of facilitation, a lot of collaboration, and a lot of gathering of information. And the other 25% is customer interviews and research. Cool. Awesome. I see Brianna.
I feel like we covered so much, but also like just get like the tip of the iceberg. So thank y'all. We are not going to be joining the main room again. So I would like to take this opportunity to, one, thank everyone for joining us this evening, and two, thank these awesome panelists and moderator for spending their evening with us. This was a really awesome conversation. So I'm about to post something in the chat. It's going to be a Google, it's going to be a link to a Google form. It's going to have all the speakers are going to own their own Zoom meetings. Didn't want to make y'all join someone's room that didn't really have as much relevant experience that you were looking for. So just to recap, whose experience may fit you. Michelle started as an analyst and moved to product management. Caroling started in project management, actually started in something that had nothing to do with this at all, and then went to project management, and then went to product management. Eden's background is project management, and she currently does program management. And Ming has a technical background and now is product. So about to hit send on this. Give everyone just a few minutes to navigate over to those Zoom rooms. So we'll get started in maybe 2 minutes. So you'll X out of this Zoom, and you will move over to the next, whichever room you want to join. I recommend keeping that Google Doc up. I'll also post the whole chat, the whole link, just in case anyone has any blockers on their computers. So yeah, if y'all want to go ahead and make your way over there, we will get started. Thank y'all so much.
Bye, panelists.
Thanks, Caroline. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks, you guys.
Nice to meet you.
Bye.